He wanted to change his neighborhood through art, but he ran into walls of power and corruption. When all seemed lost, an unexpected alliance brought him face to face with a hidden truth. Sometimes heroes wear leather jackets and carry invisible scars. Welcome to the channel. Before we begin, like and subscribe so we can keep creating stories like this. On the cobblestone streets of Santa Fe, where the sun painted the colonial walls orange every sunset, Jason Reynolds walked with his gaze fixed on the horizon. At 25, he carried on his shoulders the weight of a promise made to his grandmother, before her passing, to convert the old family auto shop into a cultural center for the youth of the Riverside neighborhood. His steps echoed on the stones as he dodged tourists photographing the centuries-old architecture. Sweat ran down his forehead, not only from the New Mexico heat, but from the meeting he was about to face. "This time it has to work," he muttered to himself as he pressed the folder of documents against his chest. Inside were the plans and the project he had drafted during endless nights, stealing hours from sleep and from his job as an art teacher at the local middle school. The community center was more than a dream. It was the only alternative for the neighborhood kids to have their own space, away from the influence of the Ravens, the group of young men who controlled the street corners and recruited teenagers for their activities. Jason turned the corner of Clock Street and stopped in front of the municipal building. He took a deep breath. This was his third application, and Mayor William Parker had rejected the previous ones, citing lack of budget and more urgent priorities for the tourist city. While waiting in the anteroom, his thoughts traveled back 5 years, when his younger brother Eric had been attracted to the Ravens with promises of respect and quick money. Now Eric was serving a sentence for damage to public property and resisting arrest. "Mr. Reynolds, the mayor will see you now," announced the secretary, interrupting his memories. Across the mahogany desk, William Parker, with his impeccable suit and political smile, absently flipped through the documents that Jason had just handed him. "The same thing again, teacher," he said without looking up. "I've already explained that Santa Fe has other projects underway, the restoration of the chapel, the new lookout to attract more tourism." Jason clenched his fists under the table. "Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, while we invest millions to attract tourists, we're losing our young people. The Riverside neighborhood has the highest school dropout rate in the entire state. The kids don't have safe spaces." The mayor sighed, visibly irritated. "And you think a cultural center will solve that? These are structural problems, Reynolds. Family issues, educational issues." "That's exactly why," Jason leaned forward. "The center would offer workshops in art, music, computing. I have 15 volunteer teachers willing to donate their time. We just need the municipal permit and connection to public utilities." Parker closed the folder with a sharp snap. "I'm sorry, but the answer is still no. Resources are limited." When Jason left City Hall, the sun was already hiding behind the emblematic chapel. Frustration burned inside him, but he wasn't willing to give up. He walked to the main square and sat on a bench, watching tourists and locals enjoying the evening. It was then that he noticed a group of teenagers on the corner. Among them, he recognized Charlie Mendoza, one of his brightest students who had dropped out of school 3 months earlier. Now he wore a leather jacket with a raven embroidered on the back, the symbol of the group. Jason hesitated for a moment, but then stood up and headed toward them. The boys immediately tensed. "Mr. Reynolds," Charlie greeted with a mixture of respect and defiance in his voice. "What brings you here? Looking for lost students?" The others laughed, but Jason noticed the discomfort in Charlie's eyes. "Just passing by to say hello. We miss you in art class. Your mural about American history remained unfinished." Charlie looked away. "I don't have time for drawings anymore. I have responsibilities now." "With the Ravens?" Jason asked directly. Silence fell over the group. One of the boys, taller and with a scar on his eyebrow, stepped forward. "Any problem with that, teacher?" Jason kept his calm. "None, just that. Charlie has extraordinary talent. It would be a shame to waste it." The boy with the scar smiled with disdain. "He can use his talent here too, for more lucrative things." Jason was about to respond when a woman approached the group. She wore a simple but elegant dress, and her presence made the boys stand up straight, suddenly respectful. "Elena," muttered the one with the scar. We weren't expecting you today. Elena Thompson, in her 30s, and with a penetrating gaze, assessed the situation. Everything all right here? She asked in a voice that didn't admit evasions. Just talking with the teacher, Charlie quickly replied. Jason Reynolds, I teach art at the middle school, he introduced himself, extending his hand. Elena shook it firmly. Elena Thompson, let's say I'm interested in the welfare of... Tell these boys. There was something about the way she spoke in her posture that immediately intrigued Jason. She didn't seem like a typical member of the Ravens, but she clearly had authority over them. Charlie was one of my best students, Jason C. commented. Elena looked at the boy with interest. Is that true, Charlie? You never mentioned you had a talent for art. Charlie shrugged, uncomfortable under the attention. It's no big deal. I have photos of his work on my phone, said Jason, quickly searching. He showed the screen to Eleanor, an impressive mural representing American history, from the Native Americans to the modern era, with a style that blended realism with elements of urban graffiti. Elena observed the images with genuine surprise. This is extraordinary, Charlie. Why didn't you tell me? The boy with the scar interrupted. Elena, we have things to do. The meeting with... Elena raised a hand, silencing him. One moment, Ryan. She turned to Jason. Can we talk privately? Mr. Reynolds? Moving away from the group, Eleanor was direct. I know about your project, Mr. Reynolds, the Cultural Center for Riverside. Jason couldn't hide his surprise. How do you know about that? Santa Fe is a small city, she smiled enigmatically, and I have my sources in City Hall. I know the mayor rejected you today, for the 3rd time. Do you work for the municipality? Elena let out a brief laugh. Not exactly. Let's say I have some influence in different circles. She looked toward the boys who were watching them from a distance, and I'm especially interested in the future of those young men. Even if they're in the Ravens? Jason asked, unable to contain his skepticism. Especially if they're in the Ravens, she replied with an intensity that disconcerted him. Mr. Reynolds, perhaps we could help each other. Your project and my resources. I don't understand, Jason confessed. What would you gain from a cultural center? Eleanor observed the square, the tourists, the locals, all the life that bustled around. Redemption, maybe, she murmured almost to herself. Then, more determined, I propose a meeting. Tomorrow at the Conspiracy Cafe at 5. Bring your plans and your complete project. Without waiting for a response, Eleanor returned to the group of boys and they left together, leaving Jason with more questions than answers. That night in his small apartment above a craft store, Jason couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. Who was Elena Thompson really? What kind of influence did she have over the Ravens? And more importantly, could he trust her? While reviewing his plans for the cultural center again, his phone vibrated with a message. An unknown number. The proposal is serious. Tomorrow you'll know who I really am. E.T. Jason contemplated the message for a long time. His instinct told him he was about to cross an invisible line, but also that this could be the only opportunity to make the project that meant so much to him and to his grandmother's memory reality. The Conspiracy Cafe occupied a restored colonial house with its stone walls and century-old wooden beams. Jason arrived 15 minutes before the appointed time, choosing a table in the corner that allowed him to observe the entrance. He spread out his plans and documents, mentally reviewing the arguments he had prepared during his sleepless night. The doorbell rang at exactly 5 o'clock. Eleanor Thompson entered with the confidence of someone who knows their power. She wore a black-tailored suit, sober and elegant, and her hair pulled back accentuated her fine but firm features. Behind her, to Jason's surprise, came Ryan, the boy, with the scar this time in formal attire and with a respectful attitude. Punctuality, I like that, Elena greeted, extending her hand. Ryan will join us. He's my personal assistant and let's say my eyes and ears in Riverside. Jason shook hands with both, noting the transformation in Ryan. Without the defiant attitude from the square, he seemed like a completely different young man. Let's order coffee first, Eleanor suggested, signaling the waiter. The best in Santa Fe, they say. Once the coffee was served and after an exchange of courtesies, Elena went straight to the point. "I've reviewed your project, Mr. Reynolds. It's ambitious and precisely what Riverside needs." Jason frowned. "Reviewed? But only the mayor has." "The complete documents." Ryan smiled slightly, exchanging a knowing look with Eleanor. "As I told you, I have sources," she explained naturally. "The important thing is that I'm willing to finance it completely." The offer hung between them like something too good to be true. Jason put his cup on the table, studying Elena's face. "Why? You don't even know me." "I know enough," she replied. "I know about your brother Eric. I know you've been trying to create this center for 3 years. I know you turned down a better paying position at the easy private school in St. Clair to continue teaching the young people in your neighborhood." Jason's discomfort grew. "You've been investigating me." "Of course," she admitted straightforwardly. "I don't invest my money without knowing my partners." "Partners?" Jason shook his head. "This is a social project, non-profit." Elena smiled. "Benefits aren't always measured in dollars, Mr. Reynolds." She paused and her expression changed, becoming more serious. "I should be transparent with you. My full name is Elena Thompson Montgomery." The name Montgomery resonated in Jason's mind. The Montgomery family was legendary in Santa Fe, owners of half the city according to rumors, with businesses ranging from luxury hotels to the real estate industry. "I'm the heir to the Montgomery Group," she continued, "the company my grandfather and my father built over decades." "I don't understand," Jason confessed. "Why would someone like you be interested in a small cultural center in Riverside, or in the Ravens, for that matter?" Elena exchanged a glance with Ryan, who nodded slightly as if giving her permission to continue. "The Ravens aren't what you think, Professor," she explained. "At least, not now. 5 years ago, when your brother joined, they were different. Troublesome, yes, but then, let's say there was a change in direction." Ryan leaned forward. "I grew up in Riverside, just like you. My older brother was one of the original founders of the Ravens. When what happened to him happened, Elena intervened." "Intervened?" asked Jason, increasingly confused. Elena aside, as if deciding how much to reveal. "The Montgomerys have a historical debt to Riverside. The land where the neighborhood was built belonged to my family 3 generations ago. It was expropriated during the Great Depression and redistributed. My grandfather never forgave that, and when he regained economic power, he made sure Riverside never received municipal investment." "Are you telling me your family deliberately blocked the development of the neighborhood over a century-old vendetta?" The incredulity in Jason's voice was palpable. "My grandfather and my father, yes," Elena admitted without excuses. "I'm trying to repair that damage." "Through the Ravens?" "Through reconverting them," Ryan intervened. "The kids you saw yesterday aren't gang members. They're students, some work part-time. Elena offers them scholarships, training." Jason looked at both of them, trying to process the information. "So what are the Ravens now?" "A community support network," Elena replied. "They still keep the name and appearance because it gives them protection in the neighborhood, but their purpose has changed. They help the elderly, keep the streets safe, organize activities for the little ones." "And why keep it a secret?" questioned Jason. "Why not do this openly?" "Politics," Elena responded with bitterness. "Mayor Parker was financially supported by my father in the last election. If he knew I was reversing family policies, he would use his influence to stop me, and the boys would lose their only chance." Jason remained silent, assimilating the revelations. Part of him wanted to believe them, but another part remained cautious. "What about Charlie? Why did he drop out of school if you promote education?" Elena and Ryan exchanged glances again. "It's complicated," Ryan responded. "His family situation is difficult. His father has been unemployed since they closed the textile factory. His mother is sick. Charlie started working afternoons at one of the Montgomery hotels as a kitchen assistant. Elena arranged that." "He should have talked to me," insisted Jason. "We could have found a solution for him to continue studying." "You're right," Elena conceded. "That's one of our mistakes. We react to emergencies without considering the complete picture. That's why we need your project, your educational vision. The waiter approached to refill their cups, giving Jason a moment to reflect. When the employee left, Elena took out a document from her portfolio and slid it across the table. My formal proposal. Complete financing of the Cultural Center through the Montgomery Foundation, which I created last year. With one condition: the Ravens will actively participate both in construction and in the programs, and Ryan will be the liaison between both projects. Jason took the document, quickly skimming it. The figures were considerably higher than what he had originally budgeted. Why me? You could do this directly. I need a neutral public face, explained Elena. Someone respected in the neighborhood with educational credibility. It can't be me. The Montgomerys generate too much suspicion. And I need someone who really believes in these young people, who sees beyond appearances. The words resonated with Jason. Wasn't that exactly what he had wished for his brother? Someone who saw his potential before it was too late. There's something else you should know, added Elena, even more serious. Mayor Parker didn't just reject your project. There are plans for that land where your grandmother's workshop is. Jason tensed. What plans? A tourist development. Luxury condominiums with a view of the historic city. The Santa Fe Business Group has already presented preliminary designs. But that land is mine. I legally inherited it. And laws can be changed or interpreted in convenient ways, Ryan intervened. There's an urban renewal project being prepared at City Hall. They could declare Riverside a zone of public utility and begin expropriations. The information hit Jason like a punch. How do you know this? Elena smiled humorlessly. The Santa Fe Business Group is a subsidiary of Montgomery. My father is still the president, although I now manage 40% of the shares. I have access to privileged information. And why would you warn me about your own company's plans? Because they're not my plans, Eleanor replied firmly. I'm in an internal battle for control of the group. My father and I have very different visions about corporate social responsibility. He sees Riverside as an obstacle to tourism development. I see it as a community that deserves to prosper on its own terms. Ryan added, if we manage to establish the cultural center before the renewal project is approved, it will be much harder to justify the expropriation. Jason put the documents on the table, feeling the weight of the decision. I need time to think. We don't have much, Elena gently pressed. The renewal project will be presented to the council in 2 weeks. What would happen to the Ravens? If I accept, they'll continue to exist as they are now, but with an additional purpose, supporting the cultural center. Many of them have skills they could teach there. Ryan, for example, is a certified systems technician. Jason looked at the young man, surprised. Ryan nodded. I studied online. Elena paid for the courses. After a long silence, Jason spoke. I need proof, something that shows me all this is genuine. Elena seemed to consider the request. Fair. What do you suggest? A meeting with the Ravens, all of them. I want to hear directly what they do, what they plan. No intermediaries. Eleanor and Ryan exchanged looks. It can be arranged, she conceded. Tomorrow night, at the old textile factory. One more thing, added Jason. If all this is true, why didn't Charlie tell me anything? Why maintain the appearance of being a problematic group? Protection, Ryan responded simply. As long as other youth groups fear us, they won't try to establish themselves in Riverside. And the authorities leave us alone as long as we don't cause visible problems. It's complicated, Professor. Good sometimes needs a certain moral ambiguity to survive. Jason collected the documents, storing them in his folder. Tomorrow, then. If you convince me, we'll talk about this financing. As he rose, Elena stopped him with a final question. Why is this center so important to you, Jason? Is it just because of your brother, or is there something more? The question took him by surprise. No one had questioned his deeper motivations. My grandmother, he replied after a moment. She believed that young people only need a space where they are truly seen, where someone recognizes their value before they themselves forget it. Elena nodded, as if the answer confirmed something she already knew. Until tomorrow, Professor. As he left the cafe, Jason felt that he had just crossed an invisible threshold. The certainties he had lived with for years began to waver. The Ravens, the enemy he had blamed for his brother's situation, were now potential allies. And Elena Thompson, heir to an empire built on inequality, was seeking redemption or just exercising a new type of control. Night was falling over Santa Fe as he walked back to his apartment with more questions than answers. The old textile factory stood like a sleeping giant at the edge of Riverside. Its high red brick walls retained the scars of decades of production and abandonment. Jason stopped in front of the rusted gate, observing the boarded-up windows and the faded sign that still showed the Montgomery Textiles logo. Now he understood the connection. Ryan was waiting for him at the side entrance, barely illuminated by a distant streetlight. "Thank you for coming, Professor," he greeted with a formal gesture. "Eleanor and the others are waiting inside." The east interior of the factory was not what Jason expected. Far from being an abandoned building, the vast space of the former weaving room had been transformed. LED lights illuminated different areas, one with computers arranged in a circle, another with music and recording equipment, a third with work tables where half-finished electronics projects could be seen. In the center, a large round table where Elena was talking, with about 15 young people, including Charlie. Everyone fell silent when Jason entered. "Welcome to the nest," said Elena, standing up to receive him. "That's what we call this place." Jason scanned the space with his gaze, genuinely impressed. All of this was here, hidden in plain sight. "The best way to hide something is in plain sight," replied one of the youths, who couldn't have been more than 17. "Nobody approaches an abandoned factory, especially with the legend that the Ravens use it as their hideout." The comment provoked laughter among the boys. Eleanor formally introduced each one. Besides Ryan and Charlie, there were Lucy, an engineering student, Martin, an electrician's apprentice, Sophie, who had left high school but now studied online while caring for her younger brother, and 10 other young people, each with their particular story. "I understand you have doubts," Elena said when the introductions were finished. "That's why we organized this. They can explain better than I what we do here." Charlie was the first to speak. He approached Jason with some shyness, so different from his defiant attitude in the square. "Mr. Reynolds, I know you must think I betrayed you by leaving school, but I'm studying here too." He pointed to a corner where there were easels and canvases. "Eleanor got a museum restorer to give me classes twice a week, and I work at the hotel to help my family." "Why didn't you tell me anything, Charlie?" asked Jason, more hurt than angry. "The Ravens have a code," Ryan intervened. "We keep our evolution private. It's complicated to explain, but it's for protection." Lucy, a young woman with short hair and an intelligent look, added, "Not everyone in Riverside would look kindly on us, moving away from the image they have of us. Some parents wouldn't let their children join if they knew we actually study and work." "That doesn't make sense," replied Jason. "Why would anyone oppose you improving yourselves?" "Because change hurts," responded Elena. "Recognizing that these young people can excel means admitting that they themselves, the adults, could have done more with their lives. It's easier to keep everyone at the same level than to accept that some rise above." Jason toured the large space, stopping at each workstation. At one, Martin proudly showed a solar lighting project for the poorly lit streets of the neighborhood. At another, Sophie was teaching basic math to 2 of the youngest members. "And where does the funding for all this come from?" he finally asked. "From me," Elena replied straightforwardly, "or more specifically, from my share of the Montgomery Group dividends. I channel it through the foundation, so it's legal and transparent, although not public." "Why the secrecy? This could be a model project for the entire city." The young people exchanged uncomfortable looks. It was Ryan who responded, "Because not all of the Ravens have evolved. There's a faction led by Jack Torres that resists change. They're not here tonight." Elena completed the explanation. "Jack was the original leader. When I began this project 3 years ago, he pretended to cooperate, but he actually continues to maintain problematic activities with some followers." The revelation surprised Jason. So the Ravens are divided. In transition, Elena corrected. The majority is here. Those who are missing still don't trust or have loyalties to Jack. That's why we need your cultural center, Jason. A public, legitimate space where these young people can openly show their talents without fear of reprisals. Charlie approached, again this time holding a portfolio. I wanted to show you this, Mr. Reynolds. Inside were dozens of sketches and paintings, all signed by him. Portraits of the neighborhood elders, everyday scenes, but also modern designs, artistic graffiti that transformed messages of hopelessness into visual manifestos of peaceful resistance. You've made a lot of progress, acknowledged Jason, genuinely impressed. Who has been guiding you? Michael Reynolds, Charlie replied with a smile. The name fell like a bomb in Jason's consciousness. My brother? But he's on parole for the last 4 months, Elena completed. He works as an auxiliary restorer at the museum under my direct supervision. He was one of my first hires when I took over the direction of the foundation. Jason felt like he couldn't breathe. His own brother, whom he visited monthly at the penitentiary, had been free for months and never told him. Why didn't he contact me? Shame, mainly, replied a voice from the back door. Everyone turned. There was Michael, thinner than in his memories, with short hair and a serenity in his face that Jason had never seen in him. I wanted to find you when I had something to be proud of, brother. The encounter was intense and confusing. Awkward. Hugs, half-asked questions, halting explanations. Elena discreetly indicated to the young people to give them space, leading them to another area of the factory. I'm sorry, said Michael when they finally sat in a secluded corner. I wanted to tell you, but every time I imagined your reaction, I was afraid of disappointing. You again. How could you disappoint me more than by hiding something like this? Asked Jason with evident pain. Because I didn't want to be your rehabilitation project. I wanted to prove to myself that I could change without it being because of you. His brother's raw honesty hit him. For years, Jason had fantasized about guiding Michael toward a better life, being his savior. He never considered that this very thing could be part of the problem. Elena offered me an opportunity that no one else would give me, continued Michael. A real job with responsibility. Not because I'm your brother, but because of my talent. Do you know what that means for someone with a record? Jason nodded slowly. And the Ravens? How do you fit into this? I was one of the original founders, Michael confessed, along with Jack Torres, but our paths separated when he chose more problematic activities. I ended up arrested for something stupid, while he escalated. Elena approached again, with Ryan at her side. Michael was my first contact with the Ravens, she explained. I met him during an art program at the penitentiary. I discovered his talent, but also his knowledge about Riverside and its dynamics. It was he who suggested the transformation strategy from within. Jason looked at his brother with new eyes. All. This time, while I was planning the cultural center, I was helping Elena rescue the kids one by one, Michael completed. Different methods, same objective. Now you understand why we need to join forces, Elena intervened. Your cultural center would be the legitimate facade, the public space. The nest would continue to function as a talent incubator and safe refuge for those who cannot show themselves openly. Jason stood up, needing to process all the information. He walked through the large space, watching the young people who had now returned to their activities. Charlie was painting with absolute concentration. Martin was explaining his lighting system to 2 companions. Sophie continued with her improvised math class. Everything he had dreamed for his cultural center already existed here, in a clandestine but effective form. What will happen with Jack? He finally asked. He's the biggest obstacle, Ryan acknowledged. He has connections with powerful people in Santa Fe, including the mayor. And he won't like seeing his territory threatened by a cultural center. Don't underestimate Jack, added Michael. He's smart and observant. He probably already knows about this meeting. As if confirming his words, Ryan's phone vibrated with a message. His expression changed as he read it. We have a problem. Jack and his boys are lurking around your grandmother's workshop, Jason. My workshop? Why? It's a warning, Michael explained. He knows we're meeting. He wants to show that he can touch what matters to you. Jason felt a chill. The workshop wasn't just his property and the place intended for the cultural center. It contained all his grandmother's memories, her tools, her paintings. I have to go there. That's exactly what he wants, Elena warned. To provoke you, create a confrontation. We can't give him that satisfaction. And what do you suggest? Leave him to vandalize the place? No, Ryan intervened. We suggest using his own strategy against him. Elena nodded. The legitimate ravens, those who are here, can mobilize to protect the workshop without direct confrontation. Their mere presence will deter Jack tonight. The young people were already organizing, led by Ryan. Jason watched with a mixture of amazement and concern. Is this what they do? Protect the neighborhood? Among other things, Elena confirmed, informal patrols accompanying the elderly, surveillance at schools, without violence, just presence. It's a fragile balance, added Michael, but it has worked so far. As the young people prepared to leave, Charlie approached Jason. Mr. Reynolds, I think you should see this before making your final decision. He handed him a worn notebook. These are testimonials. Each of us wrote our story, how our life was before the nest and how it changed afterward. Jason opened the notebook. The first story was Ryan's, narrating how he had gone from petty criminal to certified technician. Next came Lucy's, who had dropped out of school to care for her siblings until Elena arranged a community childcare system. Story after story, the notebook revealed profound transformations, not just in the young people but in their families and immediate environment. The last entry was from Michael, written in handwriting that Jason recognized instantly. My greatest wish, his brother concluded, is that someday this project will come to light and that my brother Jason can feel proud not only of what I tried to be, but of what I finally am. The words penetrated deeply into Jason. He looked up at Eleanor, who was patiently waiting for his reaction. What's the complete plan? I want to know everything. The early morning found Jason, Eleanor, and Michael in the improvised office she had at the back of the factory. Maps of Riverside covered the walls, along with progress charts, photographs of the young people and their projects, and an elaborate diagram connecting the Montgomery Group with various businesses in Santa Fe. The plan began 3 years ago, Elena explained as she served coffee. When I met your brother in the art program, something changed in my perspective. All my life I had heard my father and grandfather talk about Riverside as an urban planning problem, never as a community of real people. Michael continued. Elena asked me something that no one had asked me before, what I would have needed as a young man to not end up in trouble. I told her about the old carpentry workshop where Mr. Matthew used to let us spend the afternoons, learning to work with wood, away from the streets. That space closed when Mr. Matthew died. 6 months later, I was in trouble. That's when I investigated the history of Riverside, added Eleanor, pointing to old documents. And I discovered my family's historical debt to the neighborhood. The expropriated lands, the unfulfilled promises, the systematic blocking of any urban improvement. My grandfather had turned his resentment into business policy, and my father continued that tradition. Jason reviewed the documents with growing understanding. That's why the mayor rejected my project so many times. It wasn't just lack of budget. Mayor Parker receives funding from the Montgomery Group for his campaign, Elena confirmed, and my father still controls 60% of the shares. I inherited 40% from my mother, and that gives me some financial independence, but not control over corporate decisions. And how do the Ravens fit into this? Asked Jason. When I was released on parole, Michael explained, Elena offered me a job at the newly created Montgomery Foundation. She asked me to identify young people with potential in Riverside. Naturally, I thought of the Ravens. Many were good kids in impossible situations. The problem was Jack Torres, Eleanor intervened. He had already established connections with influential people in Santa Fe, including some hotel managers who used the Ravens to keep the tourist area clean, driving away street vendors and unauthorized street artists. An elegant form of territorial control, added Michael. Jack initially accepted our proposal, training for the kids, legitimate jobs, educational support. But when he saw that this meant losing control over them, he began to sabotage us. Elena's phone rang, interrupting the explanation. It was Ryan confirming that the workshop was secure. Jack and his followers had retreated upon seeing the presence of the other ravens. "This is just a temporary truce," Elena warned. "Jack now definitely knows you're involved, Jason. He'll escalate his response." "What can he really do?" questioned. "Jason, we're not talking about violent groups." "Violence isn't the only method of pressure," Elena responded. "Jack has information about municipal contracts, knows irregularities in the mayor's administration. He has built his power based on knowing things he shouldn't know. And he'll use that against us," Michael completed. "He's probably already talking to the mayor right now, telling him about our meeting, about Elena's financing of the reformed ravens." Jason processed the information with growing concern. "So what's the next step?" "Accelerate," Elena responded decisively. "Tomorrow we'll present the formal application for the cultural center, but not to City Hall. We'll go directly to the state government with all the supporting documentation, the educational project, the list of volunteer teachers, the financial commitment of the Montgomery Foundation." "Won't that further infuriate the mayor?" asked Jason. "Undoubtedly," Elena smiled, "but it will also put him on the defensive. If he rejects a fully funded social project with state support just before starting his re-election campaign, it will look terrible publicly." "It's risky," commented Michael. "My father will counterattack when he finds out I'm using the Montgomery name for this," Elena acknowledged. "But I have my own cards to play. Documentation on how the group has manipulated municipal permits. For years. I don't want to use it, it's my last option, but I have it." The conversation continued until dawn. When the first rays of sun filtered through the factory windows, they had a detailed plan. Presentation to the state government, media, campaign about the youth renewal of Riverside, exposure of the artistic talents of the reformed ravens, beginning with Charlie's work, and the public revelation of Michael as coordinator of the arts program. "It all comes down to who moves first and fastest," Elena summarized. "Jack and the mayor will react, but if we're already publicly positioned, their room for maneuver will be limited." 3 days later, the situation had evolved vertiginously. The Cultural Center project had been received with enthusiasm by the State Department of Social Development. The local newspaper published an extensive report on the rebirth of Riverside, with photographs of the young people and their projects. An improvised exhibition in the courtyard of the middle school, where Jason taught, displayed Charlie's paintings and the creations of other ravens. The community was beginning to see those young people they once feared with new eyes. However, the reaction wasn't long in coming. Jason received a municipal notification. His property was under review for possible structural irregularities that could represent a public danger. At the same time, the middle school principal informed him that they had received a formal complaint about his use of school facilities for unauthorized activities. But the hardest blow came from where they least expected it. One morning, while Jason was having breakfast in his small apartment, Elena called him urgently. "Jason, turn on the local news, now." On screen, Mayor Parker was holding a press conference. At his side, surprisingly, was Jack Torres, introduced as a community leader from Riverside. The mayor was announcing an ambitious youth renewal program that would include a sports and cultural center in the neighborhood, funded with municipal funds and the generous contribution of the Santa Fe Business Group. The location, exactly the land where Jason's grandmother's workshop stood. "It's their counterattack," Elena murmured over the phone. "They've gotten ahead of us with a similar project, but controlled by them." "How can they dispose of my property?" asked Jason, stunned. "The project includes a declaration of public utility. With that, they can initiate an expropriation process with fair compensation." The news left Jason devastated. All his work, all his dreams, seemed to be crumbling. But the real shock was yet to come. As he continued watching the broadcast, the camera focused on other people present at the conference. There, among the businessmen supporting the initiative, was Ernest Montgomery, Elena's father. And beside him, to Jason's astonishment, was Ryan. "It can't be," he whispered. The camera captured the moment when Ryan shook the mayor's hand and smiled for photographs. "Elena, Ryan is there, with your father." A tense silence extended across the line. "I know," she finally responded with a controlled but tense voice. "He's betrayed us." The following hours were chaotic. At the nest, the young people were divided and confused. Some defended Ryan, suggesting he must have his reasons. Others considered him an absolute traitor. Charlie, in particular, was devastated. Ryan had been his mentor, who had introduced him to the reformed Ravens. Michael tried to maintain calm and unity, but the situation was rapidly deteriorating. "We need to talk to Ryan," Charlie insisted. "There must be an explanation." "The explanation is simple," responded one of the young people bitterly. "They offered him money and power, and he accepted." Elena remained unusually silent, reviewing documents and making calls in her private office. Finally, as the sun began to set, she gathered everyone. "I've confirmed what I feared," she announced. "The betrayal is deeper than we thought. Ryan has been leaking information to my father for months. He knows all our plans, our resources, our strategies." The revelation fell like ice water over the group. "How are you so sure?" asked Jason. Elena projected a series of emails on the wall. "My father isn't as careful as he thinks with his digital security. I've had access to his corporate email for some time. These messages are from Ryan, reporting in detail on each of our steps." Michael hit the table in frustration. "Why, Elena? Why would Ryan do this? You gave him a chance, education, a future." "For the same reason my father will never accept the transformation of Riverside," she responded bitterly. "Control. My father controls this city through money. Jack controls the neighborhood through intimidation. And both see our project as a threat to that control." Night fell over the nest as the group debated strategies. At midnight, when most had gone to rest, Jason's phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Reynolds, not everything is as it seems. I need to see you alone. Ryan." Jason showed the message to Elena and Michael. "It's a trap," Michael immediately opined. "They want to separate us, weaken us." "Or he really has something to tell us," suggested Jason. "He knows our plans, but he also knows theirs." Elena considered both possibilities. "If we're going to meet with him, it must be on our terms. A public place, with witnesses, no risks." They agreed to a meeting for the next morning in the main square, in broad daylight. Jason arrived half an hour early, observing every corner with caution. Eleanor and Michael positioned themselves strategically in opposite cafes, watching. At 11 o'clock sharp, Ryan appeared alone and visibly nervous. He sat beside Jason on a bench. "You're right to distrust me," he began without preamble. "I've been informing Ernest Montgomery, but it's not that simple." Jason kept his calm. "What could complicate a betrayal, Ryan?" Ryan took a deep breath. "My younger brother, Alex, he's 15. 6 months ago, Mr. Montgomery offered him a full scholarship to the Santa Fe Institute, the best private school in the state. In exchange, I had to keep him informed about Elena's activities." "Why not talk to Elena directly?" questioned Jason. "Because she would have helped me without demanding anything in return." "Exactly." Ryan lowered his gaze. "And that would have been worse. Eternally depending on her charity. Mr. Montgomery offered me what I always wanted, a legitimate opportunity for my brother without owing anyone anything. A clear contract." The explanation, though understandable, didn't justify the betrayal. "And now why did you contact me?" Ryan discreetly took out a USB device from his pocket. "Because Mr. Montgomery crossed a line. He doesn't just want to stop the cultural center, he wants to destroy Elena's reputation. He has prepared a report on how she manipulates vulnerable young people for her social experiments. He'll use the Ravens against her." Jason took the device. "What is this?" "The complete plan. Dates, contacts, falsified documents, everything. They'll use against you. And something else, the true intentions for your grandmother's land." "Which are?" "A parking lot for tourists," Ryan responded with contempt. The youth center is just the public facade. Once the land is expropriated, the plans will change due to technical necessities. The real project is a 3-level parking structure for the nearby hotels. The information was crucial, but Jason still had doubts. Why should I believe you now? I don't expect you to, Ryan stood up. Just review the information and tell her I'm sorry. I truly believed I was protecting my brother. Before leaving, he added, one last thing. Not everyone who seems to be with the mayor really is. There's internal discontent. You might find unexpected allies. 3 weeks after the meeting with Ryan, the main square of Santa Fe was bustling with activity. A crowd gathered in front of City Hall, where long tables with white tablecloths had been set up for the signing of the Agreement for Riverside. Local and state television cameras broadcast the event live, described by the media as a historic moment for urban renewal with social purpose. At the main table, a surprising lineup of personalities. The state governor, Mayor Parker, visibly uncomfortable but smiling for the cameras. Ernest Montgomery, with his usual impeccable suit. Elena Thompson Montgomery, radiant in a sober blue outfit. And Jason Reynolds, who never imagined finding himself in such a situation. Behind them, in chairs arranged in a semicircle, a group of young people from Riverside, including Charlie and other members of the Reformed Ravens, all wearing white T-shirts with the new logo. A stylized raven holding a paintbrush instead of claws. Michael was also there, formal but nervous, and to the surprise of many, Ryan somewhat apart but present. The path to this ceremony had been tortuous and full of unexpected turns. The information provided by Ryan turned out to be the catalyst for a transformation that no one had foreseen, not even Elena in her most ambitious plans. The same day they received the USB device, Elena convened an emergency meeting at the Nest. This changes everything, she had announced after verifying the documents. We can't simply defend ourselves. We need to completely change the playing field. The strategy they developed was bold to the point of recklessness. Instead of directly confronting the mayor or Elena's father, they decided to elevate the conflict to a level where neither had an advantage: the state government. Elena used family connections to arrange a private meeting with the governor, to whom she presented 2 folders. The first contained all the documentation on the legitimate cultural center project, including the total financial commitment from her share of the Montgomery fortune. The second, more delicate, revealed the real estate manipulations of the Santa Fe Business Group in collaboration with City Hall, including the true plans to convert Jason's grandmother's workshop into a parking lot. I'm not here to accuse anyone, Eleanor had told the governor. I'm here to propose a solution that benefits everyone and avoids a scandal that no one wants, especially in an election year. Simultaneously, Jason and Michael organized an unprecedented media campaign. Taking advantage of Charlie's art exhibition, they invited journalists to meet the real Ravens, showing their projects, their transformation stories, and their community commitment. The state newspaper headline, "The Young People Santa Fe Didn't Want to See," became a trend on social media. Public pressure began to grow. Meanwhile, taking advantage of Ryan's final advice about unexpected allies, Eleanor identified fractures in the apparent monolith of support for the mayor. Several tourism business people, uncomfortable with the growing influence of the Montgomery Group, were willing to support an alternative that would limit Ernest's power. The decisive moment came when the governor summoned Ernest Montgomery and Mayor Parker to a private meeting. No one knew exactly what was said in that encounter, but the next day the creation of a dialogue table for the comprehensive development of Riverside was announced, with participation from all involved actors. What began as a confrontation gradually transformed into a complex negotiation, where each party gave up something to obtain greater benefits. The final result, embodied in the agreement being signed today, represented a historic compromise. The land where Jason's grandmother's workshop was located would effectively become the cultural center, jointly funded by the Montgomery Foundation, now officially presided over by Elena, and municipal funds. In exchange, The Santa Fe Business Group would receive permits to develop a hotel project in another area, but with the obligation to hire at least 30% of staff from Riverside and trained at the new center. The reformed Ravens would be officially recognized as a legitimate youth association, while those members who had followed Jack Torres, who surprisingly had disappeared from the public scene after a mysterious conversation with the governor, would have the option to integrate into the new program or face legal consequences for past activities. Jason observed the scene with a mixture of disbelief and pride. His thoughts were interrupted by Charlie, who approached discreetly. "Mr. Reynolds, did you see the final mural? We finished it last night." Jason shook his head. The young man showed him on his phone a photograph of an imposing mural that now covered the main wall of the workshop. The work showed the evolution of Riverside, from its origins as a working-class neighborhood to its current rebirth, with figures clearly representing the protagonists of this story, including an unmistakable silhouette of Jason's grandmother holding a paintbrush and pointing toward the future. "It's magnificent, Charlie," Jason murmured, genuinely moved. "My grandmother would be proud." "It was Michael's idea," explained Charlie. "He said we needed to remember where we came from to know where we're going." The ceremony began with the governor's speech, followed by protocol interventions from the mayor and Ernest Montgomery, who surprised everyone with an unusually conciliatory tone. When it was Elena's turn, an expectant silence covered the square. "This agreement isn't really about buildings or permits," she began. "It's about recognizing that Santa Fe's true heritage isn't its colonial buildings or luxury hotels, but its people, especially those who for generations have been made invisible." As Elena continued, Jason noticed Ryan discreetly approaching his side. "How's your brother?" he asked quietly. "Good," replied Ryan with a small smile. "The scholarship is still in place, surprisingly. Your friend Elena insisted on it as part of the agreement." "She never stopped being your friend," commented Jason. "She was just hurt." "I know." Ryan looked toward the front where Elena was still speaking. "Some of us make desperate decisions when we believe there are no alternatives. She understands that better than anyone." The most emotional moment came when, after the official signatures, Charlie and 4 other young Ravens unveiled an architectural model of the future cultural center. The design, developed collaboratively between professionals and the young people themselves, incorporated elements of the old workshop along with modern and functional spaces. Most notably, the main structure was shaped like a raven with outstretched wings, symbolically protecting the interior space. As the crowd applauded, Michael approached his brother. "You know, for years it tormented me to think I had let you down," he confessed. "That I could never repair the damage I caused to our family." Jason shook his head. "It was never about repairing, Michael. It was about finding your own path." "I found it," Michael smiled. "Thanks to Elena, but also thanks to your persistence. You never abandoned the idea that Riverside could be better, even when everyone told you it was impossible." The celebration continued until sunset. While families from the neighborhood shared food and music in the square, Jason found a moment to sit with Elena in a quiet corner. "How does it feel to have challenged the family legacy?" he asked. Elena contemplated the scene before them. Children playing, the young Ravens proudly explaining their projects to interested visitors, families sharing stories. "I'm not challenging it," she responded with serenity. "I'm redefining it. My grandfather built his empire by excluding those he considered different. My father maintained it by creating artificial divisions. I want to build bridges. And your father? Did he really accept all this, or is he just buying time?" Elena smiled with a certain melancholy. "Let's say the governor was very persuasive, and that some unexpected allies turned out to be minority shareholders of the group who were tired of my father's policies." Jason nodded, understanding the implications. Politics and business always had multiple layers. "And now what?" he asked. "The cultural center will open in 6 months," Elena responded with renewed enthusiasm. "Meanwhile, the nest will continue to function, but no longer in secret. It will be the pilot program that will later expand to the official center. And the Ravens? They'll continue to exist, but officially transformed into a community youth organization. Over time, the stigma will disappear, or perhaps they'll retain some of that rebellious image, but channeled toward art and social activism. As the sun set over Santa Fe, tinting the colonial buildings orange and pink, Jason thought of his grandmother, how she insisted that young people only needed a space where they were truly seen, where someone recognized their value before they themselves forgot it. "We did it, Grandma," he murmured to himself. "Different methods, same objective." 6 months later, the Riverside Cultural Center opened its doors with an inaugural exhibition titled New Wings, showcasing the artistic work of more than 30 young people from the neighborhood. The old carpentry workshop had been transformed, but maintained its essence. His grandmother's tools occupied a place of honor at the entrance, next to a plaque that read, "To see talent, first you must believe in it." At the inauguration ceremony, Charlie, now a first-year fine arts student thanks to a scholarship from the Montgomery Foundation, gave Jason a small framed painting. It was a portrait of his grandmother, based on old photographs but capturing a vitality and kindness that went beyond the image. "She was the first Raven, Mr. Reynolds," said Charlie, "protecting her own, seeing beyond appearances." Jason couldn't contain his emotion. As he embraced his former student, his gaze met Eleanor's, who was animatedly conversing with a group of neighborhood mothers about a new training program. She smiled at him, subtly raising her coffee cup in a silent toast. And in that moment, in that small exchange, the entire story was contained. The initial misunderstandings, the distrust, the betrayals and reconciliations, but above all, the shared certainty that real change begins when someone decides to see the invisible. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Jason, Elena, and the Ravens has deeply moved you. To continue this emotional journey through social transformations in America, we have prepared a special list with equally captivating stories that explore the complexity of communities and their struggles for visibility. Find it here by clicking to your left. If this narrative touched your hearts, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day, we bring unique stories that reflect the rich cultural diversity and social challenges of our people. Your comments are our greatest inspiration to continue creating quality content. We'll see you in the next story.